Hi, I'm Rebecca and welcome to Solve Your Own Problems. In this video, we're going to talk about sleep hygiene and how to create a sleep routine that will set you up for consistent, restful night's sleep. Our sleep is insanely important for our mental health. If we don't get enough sleep, or if we're not getting enough restful sleep, we're not going to be able to deal with the things that would regularly stress us out, cause anxiety, cause a strong emotional reaction in us throughout the day. So, starting with adjusting your sleep schedule, creating a sleep routine that works for you is really important if you're going to deal with any of these big mental health emotions like anxiety, depression, mood swings. You want to prepare your body and your brain as much as possible to combat those symptoms as they come up, and a good night's sleep is where it really starts. So, we're going to talk about some things that, number one, lead up into sleep that can help you create your consistent sleep routine, and then also things that you do right at bedtime, while you're sleeping, when you wake up and need to go back to sleep, and then all the way into your morning routine, because it's all connected. So, a lot of these things you've probably heard, and you might have tried one or two of them at a time, but it's really important that you get at least 4, 5, 6 different things that you put together that work and you use consistently, not just one or two, not just sometimes, but you really want to train your brain to have restful sleep. Because what's happening is a lot of us get anxiety about not being able to sleep, and then that triggers our other anxiety, and that tells our body that it's not time to sleep because we're producing cortisol, which is our stress hormone, which essentially tells our brain it's dangerous to fall asleep right now because we are dealing with something that we might need to react to. It's activating our fight or flight mode. It's setting off all those stress chemicals in our body that's saying, definitely don't go to sleep right now because you could be in danger. This was great when we were truly, our lives were in danger, when we were in the hunter-gatherer days. Maybe you had to run from a lion, or there was an enemy nearby and you needed to stay vigilant. But we just really haven't evolved out of producing the stress hormones so vigorously when we are already in a state of anxiety. So we've got to figure out a way to dissipate that cortisol throughout our body, signal to our brain, it's okay, we're not in any danger right now, we can actually fully relax and go to sleep. Because if you are dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety before you fall asleep, even if you do fall into a sleep state, you're still not getting restful sleep. So we want to make sure that we're actually making use of that time that we are in bed sleeping. So you've probably heard you want to avoid any unnatural light for a certain period of time before you go to sleep. So bringing your phone into bed with you and scrolling through your phone is not going to be very helpful when you're trying to tell your brain that it's time to go to sleep. And this is because the lights in our phones, the TV, they're signaling to our brain that it's daylight. And it's very confusing for our brain to say, oh, it's daylight outside, so now it's time to go to sleep. So you want to maybe figure out what works for you. Some people need to do it an hour before bed, some people 30 minutes, 20 minutes. But set a time for yourself where you turn off the TV, put your phone away, and just focus on something that is calming and relaxing and doesn't involve that unnatural light. One thing that can be extremely helpful in this area is to really engage your mind and your body together and get it in line before you get into bed. So if you just take 5 minutes before bed and you do some stretches, a little bit of meditation while you're stretching, and get your brain into a state of relaxation where it realizes that if you're stopped and you're still and you're able to stretch your body, relax those muscles, then you're not in any immediate danger and it's okay to go ahead and go to sleep. So I recommend at least 5 minutes of stretching. You don't have to be a phenomenal yogi to do this. You just want to really connect mind, body, and soul before you get into that space of going to sleep. This also just lets your body work out any tension that might bother you as you're trying to fall asleep and create any discomfort. We just want to kind of work those things out before we actually get into bed, so our brain isn't associating that discomfort with our bed. So stretch for 5 minutes, and then maybe you want to get into bed and read a book, like a real book, not a book that is on your phone or on any sort of screen that's going to create a distraction for you. So either read a book or maybe write in a journal. If you're writing in a journal and you're writing right before bed, try to keep it light. It's hard when we just dump all of our really awful feelings into a journal and then try to go to sleep, because all of those thoughts and feelings are then racing around in our mind. So maybe just write a small reflection on things you were grateful for that happened during the day, or people that you care about, things that aren't going to really dig too deep down inside and create any anxiety or stress as you're falling asleep. Now, another thing that is important is making sure that your environment is conducive for sleeping. I hear all the time people say, I can't sleep without the TV on. But the thing is, when you have that television on, number one, you're getting that light in your room. And number two, you're giving your brain something that is distracting you from falling asleep. So you can't control what comes on the television, what's said, what might be a trigger. And you want to make sure that if you do have something going on that is kind of a white noise for you, that it's not something that's going to be triggering to any bad memories or thoughts. There's a technique that I like to use when I lay down in bed. I use this before meditation, but I also use it before I go to sleep. And it really just helps get your brain in a transition state out of all the restless thoughts, intrusive thoughts and feelings that have been coming through your brain throughout the day. And then it can move you into a more positive thought process before bed, or at least a very neutral thought process. So I went over this technique in my video on grounding techniques for anxiety, but again, it works really well for sleep too, especially if you struggle with restless thoughts or intrusive thoughts before sleep. So what you want to do is you can do it sitting up or lying down. I'm going to show you sitting up right now because it's less awkward for the video. But you want to take your hands and put them on your legs, and you're going to move your pointer fingers back and forth. You can look at them just to become a lot more aware of the pointer fingers than you are of the rest of your fingers. And then you want to close your eyes and try to think about both fingers at the same time. And what you'll discover while you're doing this is that your eyes start to move back and forth. This is kind of a state of bilateral stimulation. So it's hard for our brains to think about both of those fingers at the same time, visualize them both at the same time. So you're shifting that attention back and forth, and your eyes start to move, which is kind of what they do in hypnosis when they hold the little thing in front of your face and your eyes move. So you're putting yourself into a hypnotic state, essentially. It's not scary. You can pull yourself out of it at any time. But it is extremely occupying for your mind. It's really, really hard for any other thoughts to pop into your mind when your brain is so focused on that task. But it doesn't take a lot of mental energy to where it's too hard to do. So you will get to a point where eventually you can think about both of those fingers at the same time, and it's very difficult for any other thoughts to pop into your mind. It's okay if once you realize that you're thinking about both fingers, you get excited and you lose it, because you can always just go back through it again. You're gonna get your heart rate down, you're gonna get your breathing a little more regulated, and you're going to give your brain some space and kind of like a little buffer from all of those things that you've been thinking about throughout the day. Then, once you've gotten to that state, sometimes that's all that people need, and that's really great. But other times, we need a little bit of extra. So we can listen to a guided meditation. You can put on some white noise like ocean sounds or anything like that that is repetitive. There are several really great apps that have sleep stories that you can listen to that are soothing, not triggering, but also not entirely riveting to where you just feel like you can't go to sleep until you know the end of the story. And those apps typically also have different guided meditations. I have a very specific one that I like to listen to. It's a little bit more intense. It's a hypnosis for sleep. But if that makes you a little nervous, just listen to one that has maybe some positive affirmations or just a very calming story that isn't going to make you concerned about falling too deep into sleep. Then you also want to make sure that you've got a good temperature in your room, that you have, distractions out of the room. If you have your phone on the night table, you might want to flip it over so that if it does go off, the light isn't coming on constantly and distracting you or making you feel drawn to it. Another great thing is if you are lying in bed and you find your brain wandering, maybe you've already done your meditation or you don't really like the idea of meditations, you can use this technique that is also really great for grounding. And what you want to do is with your eyes closed, visualize the things around your room and imagine what they feel like on the palm of your hand. So even if I'm not touching this pillow right here, I have touched it before, so I can imagine what it would feel like if I did touch it. So you just want to visualize that on the palm of your hand. And even if there's something in your room you've never touched before, which is probably unlikely, but you can do this as a grounding technique out in public and we can imagine what it would feel like. We can use our senses, use our memories, use the creative parts of our brain, and just visualize what it feels like on your hand. And this is very active for your brain and it takes up a lot of time and energy. So your brain is able to fully focus in on that without having these other thoughts popping in. If you find that thinking about it just with the palm of your hand isn't occupying enough, imagine what it feels like on the back of your hand, because that's going to be a little different than the palm. Imagine what it feels like on your cheek. That's going to be a little different too. I've had one client before decide that she wanted to imagine what it would feel like on her butt cheek, which was new and great because you don't always rub your butt cheek on every part of everything in your room. So it's gonna take a lot of brain power to think about what that would feel like. So you can get as creative with it as you want, whatever works for you. But I just thought that was really interesting that she was like, I'm gonna have to do this because I need to do something totally out of the ordinary. So I love that. Make it work for you. Figure out that routine. It doesn't have to be exactly like what the books say or what I've said. You really want to individualize it because it's not one size fits all. This has to be your sleep routine. Another thing that helps a lot is the way that we wake up. So a lot of us feel like we have to have that really blaring, disturbing alarm that goes off that tells us it's time to get up just so that we can get out of bed. But what you're doing is you're creating an anxiety for the beginning of your day with that abrasive alarm that's going off. So you're already feeling irritated. And that then creates a feeling in your brain with waking up is irritating. Starting my day is irritating. Then what I have to do today is going to be irritating. So you want to wake up in a peaceful way. I like to set an alarm. I like to set several alarms. But the first one I set is a very peaceful song that kind of eases me into being awake. This is another thing is if you are snoozing when you wake up, you are already making the first decision of the day to not deal with what's going on for that day. So you're making your first decision to put the day off, which isn't going to give you a really great mindset headed into the day. So if you are a snoozer, instead of snoozing, try setting maybe 3 alarms that just gradually wake you up. So you're not choosing to sleep later, you're just waiting for your wake up to be a little smoother. So I set one that's really peaceful, and then the next one goes off in about 10 minutes, and it is a little more intense. I use a Buddhist chant with that one that just kind of is methodical and helps wake me up out of that sleep. And then my third one is a song that I pick that just really pumps me up for the day and gets me excited. Maybe it makes me laugh, or it's just something that motivates me. And then that way you're not just putting your day off, you're just using your sleep routine that works for you. So you're changing your mindset of what you're doing and what your choices are when you wake up. Another thing, if you are just still struggling with getting that extra time in the morning, is practice setting your alarm for the very last second that you could possibly get up to get out the door and where you need to be in time. Do that for a few days in a row, and then set it for 5 minutes earlier. You do that for maybe a week, and then you go 5 minutes earlier than that. And then you're gradually getting your body and your brain used to waking up earlier without it having to be this big ordeal. When you're snoozing or resetting your alarm, I know it feels like that extra 15 minutes is really making a big difference, but it can make you feel more groggy and confuse your brain of, are we awake or are we going back to sleep? And that's when you get that feeling of, I didn't really feel prepared to start my day because we were choosing to put it off. When you get out of bed, drink a glass of water, do the same stretches with a little bit more vigor that you did before you went to bed. So then you are creating this body routine that signals to your brain, oh, this is what we do when we get up. We get our body moving, we get our joints kind of stretched out, and any kinks that we got in our neck while we were sleeping, and we're getting our body and our brains ready for our day. And so any time that you can use as many of your senses as possible, you're gonna have a better outcome, because you're basically giving your brain extra facts to back up the idea of, it's time to wake up, it's time to go to bed. Here are all the signals that I have, all the alarms that are letting me know this is what it's time for. So the more you can give your body and brain that idea of, this is what we do when we go to sleep, this is what we do when we wake up, that is really helpful. So maybe coffee is your thing in the morning. Once you start the coffee pot, that smell of coffee lets you know it's time to wake up. And then you're sipping the coffee and it lets you know it's time to wake up. So again, the more senses we can involve in that, the better. You can do that same thing with smells. For sleep, if you want to diffuse lavender oil or chamomile oil, maybe spray a little on your pillow. Do it consistently so that when you smell that, your brain says, hey, I know what this smell is. That means it's time to sleep. Orange essential oil is a really good one for when you want to wake up. So again, try to incorporate as many of your senses as possible. Do as many things consistently and consecutively. So if you pick 5 of these things, try to do them in the same order each time. You're not doing the meditation and then stretching and then going to bed, and then the next night stretching and then meditating and then going to bed. Try to do it in the same order. Basically what we're doing here is we're conditioning our brain to get restful sleep. Now, if you struggle with night terrors, nightmares, flashbacks when you're sleeping that create a sleep issue, my next video that I am going to do is going to talk about a way that you can create a safe space in your brain for sleep, so that those dreams don't have as much of an opportunity to interrupt your sleep. And I will go over that in my next video. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. As always, if you have any ideas of videos you'd like to see, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. I love new ideas for videos. Don't forget to subscribe so that you get an update the next time that I post a video. Thank you guys.